Masterclass series was started at Holy Rat really just to find another way to like invite other people in our community that into the space and to like be able to connect everybody. And the first masterclass we had was just sort of like a general discussion about what it's like to freelance. But like moving forward, we really want to be able to bring in specific people with expertise to like just bring in their knowledge. And so this month we wanted to invite somebody to come in to talk about how to like diversify your income as a freelancer, sort of like other ways in which you can monetize yourself, especially as an artist. It's healthy sometimes to have a distance between what we make money from and sort of what we spend and how we use that money for our own personal passion. Something that I found is that when I started freelancing as a commercial photographer, a lot of the sort of intimate joy and relationship and the artistry of photography was lost. And so when I was getting hired and paid to work as a photographer, the last thing I necessarily wanted to do is to like create as a photographer. So I was finding different outlets. But on a more macro level, I think the conversation we want to have is about, you know, the growing disparity in wealth that happens because people who have access to higher education are given more opportunities than those who are not. But it as like, you know, we have increasing debt in this country because of higher education, not going to school for college just to go to school for college just to accumulate wealth is something that is more and more common. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are so many ways in which we can contribute to society even if we don't like get a higher education. Like what is the stigma about like dropping out of school or changing your mind or saying, you know what, like I actually want to contribute to society in other ways. So I will let Jonaed introduce. Do we want to go around the circle and then we'll introduce?
Hi guys, I'm Carmelo. I was born and raised here. I don't know if you want to do like a background.
Yeah, we have the time.
Yeah, I was born and raised in in Brooklyn. I live in Queens now, and I went to School of Visual Arts, and I graduated in 2016 for filmmaking, for cinematography specifically, and I've been in just freelancing forever. I've never really worked for a company. I never did any that sort of stuff, and I just kind of work on project to project basis. So this is like something that I'm really looking forward to actually diversify and learn how to make money from multiple avenues because I don't know, you just need to. You just need to eat. So.
I'm Hannah. I was born and raised in Colorado. Went to school in California for dance actually, and after I graduated, moved to New York right after, which was like 2.5 years ago. And have been freelance dancing / video editing since.
Cool. I'm Joe. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. I went to school in Chicago, art school at CIC, and then I moved to New York my junior year because I got a job offer that I was really into and didn't want to turn down. And then since then, been working in the city, freelancing. I work here with the studio a lot, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I'm Eli. My middle name is Ross, so a lot of people know me as Ross, which causes confusion at times. I'm from Minnesota originally, but I've been in New York for 3 years. I stopped going to school my last year, my senior year, at the University of Minnesota. I was studying biology and wanted to be a doctor for like my entire life, and then in that year really realized like that I was living someone else's story, someone else's like dream, and it didn't really feel authentic anymore. So then I dropped out, went to school for yoga, and started modeling and acting, and after a few years there, I wanted to buy a camera and then kind of create the work. So now I'm in New York and I'm an artist. I'm fully freelance now for like 1.5 years. I heard you talking about Tesla earlier. I used to work for Tesla for 2 years here in the city. And again, was working like 50-hour weeks at Tesla and not making art. So now I'm like back to the grind, but I'm like really fulfilled and I'm excited to like soak up some of y'all's energy.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming. Why don't we leave the floor to you? Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. I always love meeting people from different backgrounds. I think that diversity is a big strength because if you're always around the same type of people, you get the same experience, and you really don't hear their side, their story. And life, I think the best thing about life is hearing people's stories, right? Because everybody has a different story, a different way to where they got somewhere, and you really lot to learn. So my name is Jonaed Iqbal. So I was born in Bangladesh. I came here to the city when I was 3. I went to elementary school here, high school here, college here. So I really grew up in the city. I lived in Queens my whole life. And it's good. I've always been around. I went to school in the Bronx, so that's why I hate the subway. I spent 4 years taking a long trip. But so I'm the founder with a couple of partners of NoDegree.com. And NoDegree.com, so I'll tell you how we started. So originally I was on Reddit, and there was a question, for those of you who make over 100K without a college degree, what do you do and why? And a lot of the answers, they're not typical answers. They're like claims adjuster, hey, I operate a crane, or hey, I'm an elevator mechanic, or hey, I'm a bricklayer, or hey, I'm an inspector. And as a teenager, people don't say, hey, I want to become a claims adjuster when I grow up. I want to become an inspector when I grow up. And a lot of the answers were saying, hey, how they got the job. They were like, hey, my uncle told me to apply. He was in the company, or my friend, or my cousin. It was all, or they happened to see a random flyer, and that's how they got the job. And the thing is, it's like these jobs are open to other people. It's just they don't know they exist, right? People don't look for, hey, I'm gonna go on Indeed. I'm looking to become a claims adjuster. So after that, I was like, there's really a big opportunity because some people are making money. They have meaningful careers, and they can contribute to society through other ways by not just going the traditional route of going to college. So I went online, I looked up trades.com, but I was like, they're gonna ask for like 100K for this site. And then No Degree, I just put in an inquiry, and then I got an email back, and it was like, I think the guy said $1,800. So we had 3 college friends. We had a little money, and then I think we didn't answer for a few days, and we got apparently the guy sent another offer, and my friend looked online, and he said, look, they're domain reseller, let's try to get it lower. We got it for like $1,400. And then from there, it was just, that's where it started, right? In the first 2 years, it was like a bunch of guys in the basement. We were all in school. I think I was doing my master, and then, the others were working full time. So it was kind of trying to figure out like how we could monetize, how we could sort of get it out there, right? And how it could be the most effective. And then once we figured out how we make money, and it's good, I like the fact that you make money off the employers and not the visitors. So that sort of makes me happy because employers have money to burn, right? So that gave me the idea, and the main thing that I thought about No Degree was that it's unfair that everybody's told to go to college. And like you said, you're living someone else's dream. And you're told, hey, if you don't go to college, you're not going to become anything, or you're not valued by society. But that's completely wrong. And I think because you had in the 80s and 90s, you could go to college, major in anything. You could major in art, music, and then get a corporate job. And you can move up the ladder, and that was fine. And nowadays, you can't even, with an art and music degree, sometimes you will have trouble finding work in your space. Like people who major in business will have trouble finding work in their space, but just because everybody goes, they don't have a plan, and then they just expect. And I've seen industries change in front of my eyes. For example, I majored in applied math and economics, and I want to become an actuary. So right, they're the ones who come up with the insurance prices. So I graduated 2013. Between 2010 and 2013, at 2010, in order to become an actuary, you just have to pass one exam, and you will get a job, pay like 50 to 70K, whatever. Now around 2011, it was like, hey, you needed an exam, which got you an internship, which got you a job. Then it was, hey, you needed 2 exams to get the internship, to get the job. And now it's pretty much like flip a coin. When I've been on the recruiting side, like I've seen, and I felt bad, there were people with 4 exams, an internship, and they couldn't get a job.
Yeah.
Like
so it's basically about how like being overqualified doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna get a job, and then you're told to go spend like all this money to go get overqualified to guarantee a job, and like there's this complete misconnection.
Yeah, and I think the biggest misconnection is not everybody should be a doctor. Not everybody should be a lawyer, because at the end of the day, you have to figure out what's your skill set. If you hate dealing with people, and you have to be a doctor, you have to deal with people all the time, right? You have to deal with their issues. If you hate speaking and a lawyer is not the best career for you. But there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has something else they're good at. Like some people are great at fixing cars. So why are you gonna tell someone who's great, who has a certain skill set, to go do something else? It's sort of like you're taking away from their life, you're taking away from their career, because a lot of times, and I saw that when I went to school, the best students were like that old guy in the room, right? The guy who's like 30, who's married, because they're there because they know exactly why they want to be there. They have a goal, like, hey, I need this degree because it's gonna advance my career. Whereas like the 18-year-olds, the 22-year-olds, right? You have some people who know exactly what they want to do. And then you have some who are like iffy, and then you have some that are just like there because their parents told them that they have to be there or else they'll kick out of the house. And the thing is, it's like it messes it up, because if you ever go into a class and you have one guy that doesn't want to be there, he disrupts the room, right? He disrupts, like you have the one guy on the laptop, he just, right? It's better if he's doing something else, right? If I've seen so many people who are just good at other things and they don't do it because they don't know that they can actually make a living off that career. Like, and I tell people, every job has a value to society, right? The doctor has a nurse, who has the CNAs, who has the other people in the hospital, and the ambulance driver, right? And the ambulance driver has a mechanic, and you can't have you need the whole chain, right? If the guy's not repairing the ambulances and it breaks down, right? Then the ambulance driver can't work, right? And you can't deliver it, and each role is just as valuable, right? But it's sad that ambulance drivers don't get the respect that doctors get. Why? Because doctors didn't go, went to so much schooling. That doesn't make them better people. It just makes them maybe better suited for being a doctor. But ambulance drivers have gone through, right? They see some real stuff, right? They see people shot. They see people the most vulnerable. They're dealing with a lot, but they don't get the same respect. And that's something I kind of want to change with NoDegree.com, is that I kind of want to show, look, you got to value every part of the chain. You got to value the mechanic, right? Because you don't judge a doctor by his ability to change his tire, just like you don't judge the mechanic by how he does in math or how he does in college, because that's not what he's good at. You should judge people by what they're good at, what they're talented at, and I think that's how society should be, right? We have different personalities. Some people are introverts, some people are extroverts. So it's like you want people to have different skill sets, because the world would be boring if everybody was an ambulance driver. Everybody just went one thing, or everybody studied biology. It's like, that's not how you make progress, because you make progress by putting people into areas where they can make the most change because they want to be there. And so, I've kind of seen it, that there were some people, like one of my partners, he doesn't have a college degree, so he did the 2 years, and then he got a job, he worked his way up, and then when he was switching jobs, there were a lot of jobs he had the perfect experience for, but they said must have college degree, because he works in IT. It said must have college degree. So it's like, why are you eliminating a guy who has the full experience, but doesn't have a checkbox that's not even necessary, right? That's like saying, oh, if you're a photographer, oh, I need you to have a full photography degree. But if you're an amazing photographer, what does it matter, right? You should be evaluated on your skill set and what you can bring to the table, instead of, and I see it as them being lazy, like, hey, I just want to filter out these people, and I don't want to do my job of actually evaluating everyone. Just like a lot of times companies will take the lazy way route, and I kind of want that thing to change, because there are people, like, give people a chance. You'd be surprised give people a chance. If they have the experience, why would you shoot them down? Why would you, because, like, if a guy has built, go ahead.
I mean, I think that what has always inspired me about your mission at No Degree, and also your skill set, right? Like, then we bring that into the conversation. You have an incredible ability to sort of ask yourself the right questions, and that's something that I, even in the last few months of knowing you, is I've been able to sit and ask myself that question in a more honest way. Like, what are the things that I'm good at, and what are the things that I'm good at that I really enjoy? Because you're going to be able to reap so many more benefits, whether that's financially or it's self-worth or it's contribution in society, by really asking yourself that question. There's a lot of gaps in society, right? When you're applying for a job, they're in photo and in creative world, not so much, right? Mostly it's about what your portfolio is, and a lot of it is about who you know.
Yeah.
if we come back to the reasons for why no degree is so important, is because it kind of like breaks down that gatekeeping of being able to find those higher paying gigs and to be able to diversify your income, to be able to say, oh, you know what, I am really good at communications, I am really good at fixing things, like let me find those things. And I think that that's kind of like what we're trying to do even with these master classes, right? We're trying to say like, hey, like let's break down the wall that like you need to know all these people, or let's assume that you need to know all these people and allow you to find and connect with people on a real level so that you can make those connections. But like I think that because you're such an incredible wealth of information, like we could just sit and have and talk, but I think that maybe it would be nice for you guys here who have attended to like maybe ask some some specific questions. So
Yeah,
whether
feel free to interrupt me.
yeah, like something that like one of the conversations we had off camera before was about how you took a dash cam video from a car crash that you had, put it online, monetized it and sold it and made money from it when it was just some like car crash. So like you're literally talking to a mind that has the ability to squeeze all of the juice out of your own lemon, and I think that that's really what diversifying income looks like. Is like, Carmela, you have an incredible wealth of footage probably in your archives. I'm sure you got raids and raids of footage, right?
I don't have a portfolio. That's the biggest thing. It's
Yeah.
like learning how to take, that's where I'm at right now. I'm just learning how to take all the photos, all the videos that I've captured throughout the years and putting it in a way that it goes for a certain market.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's certain like strengths that I have, and there's certain like looks that I can't do, and certain looks that I can do, and that's
So that actually reminds me. So when I was looking online, I was looking at like licensing video and stuff, stock video. You should actually look into, there are
I
websites
was thinking about
online.
it,
And you put your footage, and then when someone uses it, they pay you a royalty fee. Especially if you're sitting on it,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's one thing if you know, hey, I want to sell it to a specific company because they will buy it. But if you've been sitting on it for X amount of time, and you know, hey, look, the company hasn't come along. Let me just put it online out there, and whatever. If you get paid, even if you get paid $2, that's $2 you didn't make. And a lot of times it's knowing, hey, I should do this. And I think that's why like the network is so important, because a lot of these things, it's like, as a business owner, I learned because I had to kind of go, hey, video is really expensive. Like I was like, I can't afford, paying $500 for like a 20-second clip. But there are other ways that you could get cheaper clips, and kind of figuring that out. But it's also good in that it would be great. It's like if you could sell a 50-second clip 10 times for $500, right? Now you take one thing and you kind of multiply it. So I think a lot of times, feel free to ask me questions and I'll interject. I would say one thing, yes, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, this is about
Oh, bless you.
Sorry.
No.
And I think one thing, especially as creative people, I think a lot of times, we always forget that there are some things that I feel like as people, sometimes you tend to forget, right? So I think one of the things that I sort of wanted to talk about was there are some business skills that are super important, and especially when you're going and selling your work. I think one of the things that I would highly recommend is pick up a book on negotiation. I read it, and feel free, I'll take your emails, I'll shoot you a link to one I read, because a lot of times about negotiation, they're small things, and they're not that crazy, but you'd be surprised at that. You go, let's say you're interviewing for a job, right, and they offer $60K, right? If you know how to negotiate, maybe you can turn it to $66K, right? And that's just sometimes it could just be like, hey, you know what, I see, last job I made this, I want this, or else I'm not gonna. And all of a sudden, that's an extra $6,000 to $10,000 you make just by knowing one simple trick, right? So I think a lot of times negotiation, and it's also when you're presenting your work, and also another value of negotiation is when they're trying to pull stuff on you, right? Because a lot of times, like I read one of the examples he gave was that he had tenants, and the rent was due on the 15th, but sometimes they would be late. What he did was he created a company, an LLC, where he was the owner, but he just said, now they'd be like, hey, he'd always get a request, can I pay the rent next week? He'd be like, hey, you know what, I gotta talk to the board. But the board is him and his wife, right? But the illusion of this board, he says, sorry, I can't. And that it's a negotiation tactic. But then you can see it on the other side, in that you go and you're trying to sell your footage, and and they say, oh, hey, I gotta talk to the board, right? And then you know, hey, there's no board. You know that so there's ways to counter that too. Like, hey, you know what? You're the decision maker. So knowing these things, it's like the difference between you getting a certain amount and you getting 10, 20. Sometimes you can even double or triple.
Yeah, but it's also, I think, like just the idea of it existing as an option to begin with. I think that that's really what opened my eyes in so many of the conversations we had. Like, you know, we're trying to launch a YouTube channel here at Holy Rat, and it's a wonderful place to be able to share ideas and to give education to other people. And I was talking to you, and I was like, yeah, like, you know, it's such a rewarding experience, and we're clearly seeing the impact. It makes us feel good. We gotta eat too, and so trying to figure, like, really living in that feeling of scarcity, like, okay, how are we gonna get the next video done? Like, we'll try and like, you know, rent the studio more often and bring in income that way. And then you just simply saying like, oh, did you know that if you like put a link inside of the description of the YouTube video that you can like make money with like affiliate? Like, those are the things that like I really think are so empowering by knowing you and having you as a resource, is like really juicing the lemon as much as possible. And so I feel like maybe something that we could talk about is maybe some of the ways in which all of you guys are making money, or maybe some of the projects that you all are working on right now that you're confused of like how to monetize, you know, or like what are the skill sets that maybe all of us have that we don't know that we can make money from. Like one of the resources that I know you want to talk about is just like being a reference for the what is it, the HOAR or HOR?
Oh, Harrow.
Yeah. So like being an interviewee or like an expert to be interviewed for journalists, like, and being able to like monetize yourself that way.
Yeah. So there's a thing called Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. So basically, every day they send you 1 to like 80 inquiries, and basically they're looking for sources for news stories. And oftentimes, if you have an online portfolio or you have your own website, how you rank in search engines is other people saying go to this site, or other people referencing you. So if you have an interview with them, and the bigger the source, like the New York Times or the New York Times interview, that's going to look real good. So Help a Reporter Out is a resource where every day you'll get, so sometimes they'll be like, hey, we're looking for children, like today one was, we're looking for children of divorced parents to see the impact. Or sometimes we're looking for a photographer who has specialized in this. Now, most of the things will not be relevant to you, but then sometimes you get something that's relevant to you, and then it's like, hey, you know what? Or sometimes it's just like, hey, what's the time you had experienced an issue with an agency, and what'd you do? And these type of resources, you kind of filter through it, and you see which ones. And like I said, I didn't get called back, but I didn't go. You want to keep on responding on a regular basis, because once you get one and then you get featured on the blog, now on your website you'd be like, hey, check out my interview. On your social media channels, hey, I was featured on this. And a lot of times it shows, it kind of, other people think, oh, he must be better, right? Even though you're still the same photographer, but again, it kind of, you can kind of showcase your skill set. And then another thing I would say is, a lot of times in terms of making money, is a lot of times it's expanding your research, expanding your mind, kind of looking at it in a different way. So for example, I would say if you guys are all photographers, or you like the video, I would say if you guys were like, for people who are more, I guess, artists, painters, sometimes you'd be surprised, like tutoring, like a kid. You'd be surprised, like I know like a lot, especially in Brooklyn, like they want their kids to have an art tutor, and it's like, hey, you could charge like $40-$60 for an hour, probably even more. And it's like another way to sort of make income. And kind of thinking, or if you speak another language, hey, I'm a French tutor, hey, I'm a Spanish tutor, that's another way. But again, it's sort of getting into that mindset, like, hey, I have these skills, who would look for it? And kind of understand, knowing that, hey, I can tutor. Now I can, okay, I'll put myself out there, I'll sort of advertise. And I would say also sort of really experiment. I would say, especially now, you have to be online. It's just you're robbing yourself if you're not online. That there's so many, you get so many viewers, and like I said, are you guys on Pinterest?
I like use Pinterest sometimes to like pull imagery for a shoot, but like as a platform, I think that sometimes the way that I imagine Pinterest is like it's like the housewife of all social media platforms. Like the LinkedIn is the principal you don't want to run into at the grocery store, and Pinterest is the mom. But talking about search engines, right? Like let's just focus on that for a second. Like when I think of Google SEO, I freak out. I'm like, I have no idea what that even means. I'm not sure if I can spend the time and energy to even like become an expert in it. People are paid like crazy amounts of money to be hired to like get your website at the top rank. And it's not necessarily about getting your website at the top of the search engine list when you're Googling Brooklyn photographer or something like that, but it is making sure that when somebody goes to Google your name, that what you want to have coming up is coming up. And so that like putting your imagery on Pinterest, putting your imagery on Flickr even. Do you guys even remember what Flickr is? It's still the #1 connectivity SEO thing for Google search. So when you search your name and you go to Google Images and it's that weird photo from that one party in high school that's left over on Facebook on a public album, and you're like, this is embarrassing, why am I doing a keg stand? This needs to disappear. The way you do that is tagging your name to images that you want to be associated with on all of these sort of platforms. And like I didn't even like I would call myself an expert in content creation, but I didn't even know that. And so No Degree is a great resource for you to be able to like go in and even just like open up that part of your mind of like, am I really juicing my entire lemon? Like the feeling of scarcity and the feeling of like I'm not good enough, or like I don't have the right degree, or like I really care about, like the thing that I'm really good at is maybe not valued as like some sort of like, like pillar of the community. Like maybe being a driver or mechanic for ambulances, you wouldn't necessarily, it's not your everyday like superhero, but they are, And so I think when we're inside of Holyrat and we're really bootstrapping a lot. There's not a huge budget, there's not a rich uncle somewhere. We're trying to keep costs down to the community and bring more revenue in. And there are lots of ways you can do that, but are all of the assets that you have in your life really working for you?
Yeah.
Like it's not, maybe the way that I've thought about that growing up is like, you reach a certain amount of wealth and then you buy stocks and then your money makes money. But you can have that sort of like entrepreneurship and mentality, like even if you're not at that place where like you have a whole bunch of money to spend.
Yeah, the other thing that you mentioned is like, you don't need to be at the top of the search engine, but let's say you're interviewing or they're considering you for a project. What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to Google your name.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that when they Google that they see, oh, you know what, this guy's, or at least even if they love you, at least it confirms, you know what, this guy, that when they Google you, if nothing exists, it won't really add to what they think of you. But if something exists and it's good, then they're gonna be like, all right, that got Carmelo.
Especially given like how much time you have to convince somebody, right? Like you're emailing somebody who's getting so many hundreds of emails a day. There are bots sending them emails being like, check out this work, check out this work. So when you've got like point whatever seconds to just make sure that you hit all those check marks, you really want to make sure that you're doing a good job of like keeping all those things in a row. I don't remember. Everybody Googles themselves, right?
Yeah, I Google myself.
Do you guys Google yourself?
Yeah.
Do you know what the first photo that pops up? The first photo that pops up for me is a photo of me.
Let's do
it.
Should we do Carmelo?
Yeah. Let's see. If it's
It's
embarrassing,
I don't think this is a good idea.
But everybody Google themselves right now. Maybe we won't put Carmelo on the spot. I'm gonna Google myself.
So Google yourself.
We'll see.
So let's see.
Okay. No, mine's pretty good. Mine's an interview on a blog. So talking about being a reference. Mine's an interview of a blog that talks about what I do at Holyrat. So that's pretty good. LinkedIn. Okay. My Twitter. No. Twitter. I haven't used Twitter in a long time.
What does it say?
It says film cinematographer.
Okay.
I don't even know how that happened.
That's awesome.
Is it
IMDb? Yes.
Look,
Okay.
and like I said, that's positive because
Yeah.
when someone searches you, they're like, oh, he's on IMDb.
And it's
He
from
must not be like a no-name. He must at least be credible, right?
it's from a short film that I did
Cool.
like years ago.
Like I said, at least you want to know And like I said, now you found it, right?
Yeah.
Now on your portfolio, you can say, I am on IMDb.
Right.
Search up my profile. Maybe when you go on IMDb, you can add more work because you exist there. So now it's like controlling your image online.
Right.
Ha, should I Google you?
I just did. I have an IMDb too. There's also all these like.
Did you know that you had one?
No.
Okay.
So two
But then there
people.
was
It's a
like-
website.
Joe, you have a pretty unique name. What came up for you?
Okay, here's what's even more unique about my search result is that there's literally a like famous race car part named Joe Van Overbeck, but it's like 4 words.
Oh my
long.
God, you're
So,
a car!
Yeah, so like whenever you look me up, like if you go to like all like the search results, it's like my Instagram and Facebook and stuff, but like all the images is this car part.
Well, there is some of your fashion on here.
Yeah,
But you know
yeah.
what's funny? It's because, okay, Joe, you have to tell the story.
Oh,
Joe has like a weird underground fame on Pinterest.
Yeah, because I am a designer and I have that is something that I should definitely learn how to
Yeah.
monetize, and I'm thinking about that kind of stuff. Maybe like even just plugging into more costume jobs.
Yeah.
But when I was doing my brand, the main source of content that I was using was Tumblr, and I was like, oh my god, like I wish I had more followers, like I wish I'd go viral, like I'm really so desperate to like get more Tumblr fame, and all the while this was happening, there were like thousands and thousands of reposts of the same images on Pinterest.
Oh,
And
wow.
people had taken
Your
my
work.
my work and just put it. They had literally taken it from Tumblr to Pinterest, and then those images went viral, and I didn't find out about it until years.
Yeah,
and
see,
years later.
this image is from Pinterest. This
Yeah,
is your fashion.
literally, all the ones are from
That's
Pinterest.
But that you have a unique challenge though, because your name is famous for something else.
Yeah,
And so you
yeah.
have to tackle the entire internet for the Joe Van Overbeck style hood, apparently.
Yeah, yeah, literally.
Which is literally this like midlife crisis suit.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, would you consider that on brand for you, Joe?
Yeah, I would. I kind of love it.
Yeah.
So my cousin is a famous race car driver, so I've always
So I
like,
guess it
those
kind of
are really
fits.
connected.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they
So
are.
for me,
What shows it for you?
it says my LinkedIn, so it says Jonaed Iqbal,
Mhm.
founder and CEO of NoDegree.com. So it's good at least on
Right.
searches me, they find my website because I care about people finding my website.
Right.
Mhm.
And the second one is on Instagram.
Yeah.
Who took my name on
Yeah.
Instagram?
Mm.
I have such a like
You're
rare
such a
name,
unique
so it's like,
name.
how could you take
No,
it?
I have another guy in New York who's a freelance photographer with my name.
Mm.
And that's why I have a little underscore after my Instagram, and I'm like, I keep DMing him and he won't respond to me. I was like, I'll pay for it, but no. But I think since we have such an intimate group, I do want to kind of bring the conversation back to like really specific questions, right?
Yeah.
So like, what is a goal that you guys have been thinking about to try and like diversify your income?
Or what's a problem
and, like,
you face,
what
or
is a
what's-
problem or a roadblock that you're facing with that?
I have one.
Yeah.
Okay, so whether you're a video editor or a cinematographer, photographer, stylist, or whatever you do, we're all so much in like our apps, like Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing so many people book big jobs, and we're seeing all the success, right?
Yeah.
So where is this divide of like booking these jobs? Like if the talent's there, like how do you get seen? How do you like do I need like an agent? Like do I need someone representing me in my work? Like I have 20,000 followers. I'm the spokesperson of a magazine. Like I have things going in all these
Yeah.
directions, but it never feels like enough.
Yeah.
And maybe it's only because I'm watching everyone else do everything.
So look,
You know, so it's perspective, but it's
Yeah.
also like, well, what's next then? Like, what's the next level? Because my shit's good.
Yeah.
I want to book the big jobs. Do I have to like wait for Bruce Weber to die to book photography gigs? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's like it's very strange. It's like they're handing the same jobs, at least for photography,
Yeah,
to the
the
same
same
people over and over again.
yeah, so
And it's
I would
tough.
say one thing also when you see these is like what people post on Instagram, remember that's their highlight reel. So that's also when you, especially one thing about social media is their highlight reel. Like you don't see, hey, the job didn't pay me that well, or this job fell through, or 4 jobs fell through. Because a lot of times, especially you see these travel influencers, they travel full time, but in the back scene, they're pretty much break even. They just have enough to travel, they have enough, and you know when they go traveling, they're spending 3 hours on that trip taking photos. So it's also, sometimes you also have to step back. So I would say one thing is if you have, you know, the 20K followers, kind of, have you used Meetup?
No.
I would say go to meetups. And also one thing I think a lot of, what's your photography? Meetup.com is a,
You guys know that app, Meetup?
so Meetup.com, okay, good.
Yeah.
Meetup.com is a platform where people meet up. So for example, this could be posted on Meetup.com. Like look at that, like You know, Daryl can post, oh, hey, we have a masterclass next week. So I was part of a public speaking club. We'd post that. Or sometimes it'd be like, hey, I went to meetup.com for like lawyers in the city. It was a legal tech meetup. So sometimes they're a meetup for startups. Sometimes they're a meetup for photographers. So sometimes you want to use these channels because if you have 20,000 followers, you're a qualified candidate. You just have to fix the link, right? There's a link missing, and that's what you have to fix, or that's where you have to go and grab. And maybe it's, hey, it's doing things a little differently, right? Because if you're not getting the job now, do something a little different, and then that's how maybe you have to go to these meetups, and then you meet someone who's working in the film. And
I mean, I think that like it is a particularly unique problem in the creative industry because it comes back to sort of like who you know, and who you know is because of where you come from, and that's where education, I do think, actually still has a big contribution, not because of what you learn, but because of who you know. So taking the advice of the meetup, there might be a meetup online that specifically talks about, that's literally about like photographers with big Instagram followers, how they're monetizing. Or maybe, you know, and of course, this is also like an emotional thing, right? Yeah. Setting realistic expectation that all of those highlight reels that you see on Instagrams are 100%, you know, not talking about the fact that, you know, okay, here's a fact that will actually blow your mind. You have Stephen Klein, very famous photographer. He was basically exclusively shooting all of the Interview magazine covers for the last decade. You know how much money he got from Interview and from Condé Nast to shoot those?
Probably nothing.
$250.
Oof.
But he has a long-standing relationship, and Interview magazine's covers are essentially his portfolio. So something that I think is the theme of tonight is if that path isn't working, cut your losses and don't pursue it anymore, and think about, what do I have and how do I use those assets to my advantage? Having 20,000 followers, Eli, that's an incredible thing, and you built it authentically, I'm assuming. Yes, no buying, no Russian bots, nothing like that. I think it's sitting back, looking on Meetup, having conversations, coming to Holy Ride and being like, okay, I have these 20,000 followers. What are the ways in which other influencers are taking that following and monetizing it for themselves? Right? I mean, there's certainly a different career path if you're trying to just pursue Instagram clout and become like an influencer. And from my experience and from the folks that I've met who are travel influencers, it's not an easy gig. There's a lot of filtering, and there's a lot of breaking even, and there's a lot of low pay. So I'm not saying like that's necessarily the pursuit, but rather than trying to mimic something that clearly is not working for you, come back to that original question. What brings me joy? What am I really good at? What do I already have, and how do I push that and market myself? And allow some experimentation as well. I think that's another great part of the conversations that we've had before, is like whether you're testing a Facebook ad for figure out who your audience is, or you're just testing out a different type of pitch about an angle for who you are when you are pitching these bigger magazines, you know? Like, you know, I'm sure when you're pitching magazines, you already say like, oh, you know, I have a pretty good following, but maybe bring it to the next level and say, hey, what are ways in which I can use that following to advantage you? Or like asking those direct questions. And this is kind of coming off a little bit vague, but I do think it's coming back to the drawing board and really writing out, you know, like, what are the haves that I have? And am I really maximizing every single one? You know, like when you're video editing, are you and you're pursuing jobs, are you telling people that your expertise in movement and in dance means that your editing for movement and dance-based imagery is going to be that much better? You know, and like making that be an angle. You know, something that I've heard from other people as well, speaking of photography and Instagram, is making different fake accounts for different types of personalities. You have an industry that wants you just to be one type of person. And you can be that one type of person for that one type of client by just setting up an Instagram account and just pursuing that one, like just having all of your best clips and edits for movement interspliced with you dancing and making, like, I think that that's really where your mentality has really influenced my life, is like, figure out how to make yourself super easy to hire, not by mimicking other people, but asking that original question, who am I and what am I good at? It's very different than fitting into the box, because you already have the experience of, I'm gonna be a doctor, this is what I want, this is the value, and then you wake up one day and you're like, I wasn't asking myself the right question, you know?
And adding on to Daryl's, a lot of times, like, specifically I read this recently for photography, is that when you go in and you're, let's say a car dealership is looking for a photographer, right? And if you go in and you bring in a general portfolio versus another guy who brings in just a car portfolio, who are they gonna hire? They're gonna hire the guy who specializes in car photography.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that guy's only shooting car photography. He just makes them think that that's all he's doing so he can get the job.
So like I said, if you photograph everything for that client, just say, I'm a car photographer. And you can have an Instagram channel or a Pinterest just dedicated to car photography. And you can have one, like if you, let's say, if you're applying for an action scene, hey, I specialize in action scenes, right? If you're good at it, right, and you tell them you specialize, all of a sudden they think you're much better. Right? Versus, this guy who does everything, but he doesn't specialize, right? That the word specialize just tends to get people.
I don't know, I also feel like that's such an American New York thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I was talking to another collaborator of ours, Tiago, who is he's a professor of fashion in New York, and he had extensive experience in Shanghai and China, and in that industry, being a designer, being a creative director, being an editor, being a set design, like all these different things. The culture over there is like, oh my God, you can do everything amazing. We're just gonna hire you for this one job, you build out a team, take care of it. That is the exact opposite problem here. He's overqualified, he has a portfolio to boot, and he's super talented. But he constantly is fighting with other people who aren't necessarily have the abundance of skill set, but because their portfolio for the job, let's say the job is like, I don't know, like baby clothes, or I don't know, like bye baby. Tiago comes in, overqualified, has everything that he needs, but again, the person that gets the job who is the person who happens to be interested in just taking portrait photography of kids for the last 15 years. But we have technology on our side. We have the ability to fluff. We have the ability to make a fake LLC to make that company a scapegoat so you don't have to be the bad guy. Like, I think that's where like a little bit of like that like hustle mentality is. You know, like how do you turn something into nothing? And it's just really dumping out all of your assets and looking at them and trying to maybe flip them upside down. Like look at them you could probably look at them upside down because you're a yoga instructor. Me, not so much. But I would say that that's really where the moments of enlightenment happen.
Yeah,
you know?
That reminds me, so there was this guy online, he had I read a comment where he had, let's say he makes a certain type of chair, and in order to get stores to like buy that chair off of him, to sell, he'd call the store and be like, hey, do you have this chair in stock? Or he'd go as a customer, and then eventually he'd go, and he had other people go, and then they think like, oh, we don't have this chair. So when he'd call, be like, hey, I'm the guy who sells X chair.
Oh my God, that is genius.
And like I said, it's a little creative thing, and as you keep doing, and as you get into that mindset, you start being a little more creative. Like sometimes a friend of mine, right, just a kid, he sells phone cases. He sees the store, right? He's like, hey, I'm a phone case supplier, and do you need any phone cases? And like I said, they don't know he's just like a college kid just trying to hustle. And it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if you can do the job and you can get them what they need, what does it matter if you're a big supplier or you're just someone ordering it and you have a box in the corner?
Yeah, but isn't that what these huge conglomerates are doing to us anyways? Right? When you're looking at an ad and they're promising all this stuff and they're creating a fantasy, psychologically speaking, what we're talking about is perception.
Yeah, perception is reality.
You know? And we already have the incredible skill of being creative individuals. We already have the ability of storytelling. But are you storytelling on your own path? I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
And it's the shift in mindset. You have the skills to do it. It's just you haven't really done it, right? So it's like just applying it to a different area, and as you do it, you get better at it, and you understand it. And then it's like, and like I said, like groups like this are so good in that you guys share your tricks. Like hey, there's this one thing that works for me, and it's like now you can share. And I think like especially in New York City that you have so many, like we're in a room where, right, video editing, photography, and you know you shot the movie scene, and both of you are on IMDb. It's like now you have this wealth of information you can share. So like, let's say she wasn't here, right? And you found yourself on IMDb, and you know her, like, hey, I found myself on IMDb, check it out. Now that's something that she knows, and she's like, hey, you know, and like he learned the Pinterest thing. It's like these little things, it's like, right? They might not apply directly to you, but those one or two things that do apply for you can really make a difference.
Yeah.
And that can really set your career. Like you knowing, hey, you know what, to get my next booking gig, it's like, hey, maybe you make that phone call, or you get someone else to make the phone call. It's like, hey, did you use that photographer? I'm looking for him. And then all of a sudden they think like, oh wow, someone's looking for him? I just blew that guy off. Wait, maybe I should give him another chance. Like a lot of these things.
That's a nice model.
Like, and sometimes you have to
Yeah, there was a time in my life, and I talked about this in the last Masterclass, where like when clients wouldn't pay me, I did make up a fake assistant name, and like there was, and I started doing that because I heard from somebody in some sort of like water cooler moment on set where she's like, yeah, like I have a personal assistant who isn't real. She has a LinkedIn profile and everything, and she's the person that goes after my money, and it works. And I get to maintain being this really wonderful, happy-go-lucky person with my client, and my assistant's the bitch.
And like I said, you could even put your assistant has a law degree, so you send the email like, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, and don't say you're a lawyer, 'cause then that'd be. But like I said, you give the perception like, hey, blah blah, when they search you.
That's another thing. That's a question I had. How do you go and hunt for your money? Like when that invoice is like reaches a little bit, like I need it now.
I think a lot of times it's also hunt for your money. I think a lot of times it's also setting the contract in place.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's that everybody just thinks, hey, I do the job, I get paid. So now if you go into the meeting and you say, hey, these are my terms of payment, I get paid. Now that exists. And they have to be made aware of it and be like, I don't do work unless you sign this.
Yeah, but Carmel, is that happening when you're still
Yeah,
having
I'm
people?
hunting down mine.
Yeah.
Contract.
No, because the way that like filmmaking is, it's like you get hired under the production as like a freelancer, or that's really what it is, and you do a W4, W9, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when the production's over, you send it in, and sometimes that can be like really fast or super slow.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it gets to the point where they don't even respond to you.
And you're feeling kind of powerless because they have lawyers and they have HR and they have all that
stuff. Because I
stuff.
took a trip to Puerto Rico, so like a lot of things that I was out there for a month, so a lot of things that I had going in New York City was put at a halt. You know, so the invoices that I didn't get to send out prior to the trip, doing it now, it's just like, I guess these producers are kind of just like, what? This production was like this? And so it's kind of like hitting up all the directors and saying, hey, what's the producer, this and this and this, what's their overhead? Like, I had this one instance where I hit the director up and said, hey, like, your contact is not like responding to me. And he's like, oh, this is his overhead. And it was like this girl, Teresa. I was like, hey, Teresa, tagging him and CCing him. And within like a minute, he responded. He was like, on this, like sending this out now. So it's like, oh, the overhead, like, oh, you didn't do your job. You're not answering to your job. Okay. Now I'm wrestling your tree to.
But that's a lot of time and energy to put in to be able to like. You gotta stalk on LinkedIn, figure out who's the higher up.
It's all the time. Filmmaking is like, if it's not like a bigger job, it's usually like a lot of like hunting. Like you do your work and then you have to like.
Yeah, it's another job
to get paid.
Yeah.
And that's something, you know, when you get signed, like as a director, cinematographer, or anything, you have an agent that takes care of that for you, and you have a contract and so does that. But like until then, it's just like this is the mode, and it's just like.
I think you gotta play your own, director for now. Like, I mean, that's helped me over the years. Is like when someone owes you your money, like you want your money. You already did the work. You should be getting your money, but they're gonna take their time. So at some point, you just have to know your worth and like not even do the work until like you have a really basic contract that they're gonna sign. And if they want you, if your work is good and they want you, they will sign that and they'll still have you do the work. But in that piece of paper, you'll say you have to pay me by this date.
Right.
And then if they don't do that, then you're like, yo, I'm gonna take you to court, yada yada, and then they'll probably send you your check that day. You know? But it's a matter of just also knowing your worth and not letting yourself be in that position anymore, and just setting that precedent from the moment you get a job job? You know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
when can I expect payment?
Yeah, let's
you
think
know?
about it this way. If they know you're good and they're gonna hire you, like if you know someone's good, you're not gonna say, oh, I'm not gonna hire this person because he wants a contract that I should fulfill anyway.
Right,
Right? It's not like your contract's like, hey, I want this
They
high
should
school.
do the
It's
job
just
anyway if they
yeah.
want to do that. Yeah.
So it's just going in there and just putting it up front, like, hey, look, this is this, and if you don't, I don't work with you. And like I said, if they want your work, they're gonna sign it because it's not prohibited. It's not something that.
It is kind of a confidence
Yeah.
thing though as well, and it's one of those things I think that you also learn with time, right?
Yeah.
I for a long time just kept saying yes to those bad jobs because I had the illusion of the other good jobs not being there. But ironically, the reason for why I couldn't see those jobs was because I kept on saying yes to the wrong ones. So having faith in yourself, because Carla, you're super talented, like
And you have the
know
experience.
that.
It's
You
not
have
like you're new in the
experience.
field.
You're in a better position than most. Quick resource though that I talked about last month, which was great, was the Freelancers Union. They have a freelancers hub. Have a personal contact there now. This woman named Shira. She runs the freelancers hub with a friend from like 9 to 5, so I can give her your contact. But
That's cool.
the Freelancers Union Act is actually one of the most unique pieces of legislation that exists in the state of New York. And it says that if your client does not provide an independent contractor agreement that specifically states sort of like a timeline of pay that's differentiating from a 30-day sort of standard contract, they default to a 30-day. And you have a lot of legal support on your side. And it's not necessarily like you want to go to court, it's just the ability to
say that you can.
you say that you can and that the law is on your side. It's something that I'll probably try and make a PDF because people have asked us from the last masterclass.
Yeah.
But it's basically something that says like, legally by the state of New York and stated by this person, it says that you need to have this, this, and this. And the potential damages is $250,000.
Wow.
And you can really get it, and they have to pay for your lawyer's fees.
Wow.
So that going the legal route when you need to is kind of like a more streamlined way than sort of trying to figure out their higher ups.
Right.
The higher up is always going to be the law. So just
Yeah.
default to that place and save yourself some time. And instead of like researching all of that stuff, you know, put your footage on stock thingy and make some more money that way. You know, I mean, talking about all of the assets that you have, I think something that we really need to discuss as freelancers, and this maybe is outside of just having a degree or not, it's like that your time is super valuable. And if you aren't valuing it, nobody else is going to either. I spend a lot of hours from like $5 to $10 jobs, and I'm thinking like, oh God, I can't hire an assistant, like I can't hire subcontractors, I don't have enough money. Give yourself an experiment. Say, okay, I got $100. I'm going to use that $100 to have an assistant work for me for a week and figure out how many, and give them all of my $5 to $10 jobs, right? Or I guess 10 to 20 hour, right? Because minimum wage should be 15. Watch all of the space open up in your timeline and your calendar in that week, and use that time for the expertise part. For the part that only Carmelo can do, for the part that only Eli can do, right? Which is finding those other meetups, which is figuring out your assets, which is putting affiliate sponsorship on your YouTube channel, the way that you say. And there are so many ways to skin this cat, but I think the moral of the story is that, you know, really getting spiritual here, but I really believe it. Inside out is the way for so many things, right? Don't assume that going to school and going to college and is going to mean that you're going to have success. Don't assume that you need to say yes to all of those jobs because you're freelancing and you don't know when the next check is going to come.
Right.
When we take a step back and we say, I value my time, I value my worth, I know what my worth is, I know what my assets are, and have them clear. I don't even know, like write them on your mirror in your bathroom so you look at them every morning. I really think that is a part of being a good entrepreneur. That is a good part of being a value of society, is like asking yourself.
Yeah, saying no is very important
Very
because you don't want to, especially you don't want to say yes to a commitment that you don't want to go to, or yes to a project that you don't want to undertake, because it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time, and it just takes you away from the things that you want to do or the things that put you closer to your goal. So it's like, because I tutor, and there's some people, and I only tutor one person because it's like a family friend, and because I went to like an Ivy League, I can tutor to SAT, and I know that there are people out there who make like $100, $150 an hour to tutor. So people ask me like, hey, can you tutor my son for 15? I say, no, it's not worth my time. I gotta think about my parents, I gotta think, and I used to tutor at $15 an hour in like high school, early college, because that was my experience there. But now I've done it, I have more accolades. Why would I settle for something that, that's something that a high school kid should make?
It's the illusion that saying yes to that is perpetuated sometimes because it's a slow season. You haven't had a check in a while, and so you're like, oh God, I need to pay my rent. I'm just gonna say yes to it. Hold off as much as you can, and instead of saying yes to that $15 job, take that same hour and go on YouTube and teach yourself affiliate sponsorship instead. That may not be an immediate cash return, but it is you investing for that higher bracket of income. It's you literally telling the universe and yourself, that is not something I want to do. I want more. I deserve to have more. It may not be a cash return right now, but it is an investment in for something bigger.
And also, a lot of times, I'm pretty sure you can attest that there are people who are making a lot of money in your field, and they're not better than you in terms of actual skill. But it's that's why, especially as creative people, it's when you pick up these other skills, hey, I know how to manage an Instagram channel. I know how to manage this channel. It's if you're better, then you can get to where they are. It's because they were on Instagram earlier than you guys. Some people are just big because they were on Instagram earlier. Right. They were doing these things earlier. They started a YouTube channel earlier, because most YouTube channel, I think you guys know Marquise Brownlee, the black tech guy.
Yeah.
First 2 years, he didn't get anything. And then he blew up, and most YouTube channels, the first year or two, they don't make anything.
He definitely made $1 million or something.
Yeah, now he's one of the most watched. But it's he had to do the first 2 years, but it's he was there. So it's a lot of times it's putting yourself, hey, let me get on this platform. You don't need to spend all your time on the platform, but hey, let me create a video and put it on this. Let me create a video, put it on this. And it's you having, hey, I know how to do Facebook ads. I know how to do Instagram ads. Now it's you have an additional skill because a lot of times what happens is a lot of people who are good at let's say they know YouTube, but they don't know the creative side. Right. And there are a lot of creative side people who don't know YouTube. So it's now if you're the person who does both, it sets you apart. Yeah. And it makes a big difference.
And actually, I would argue that being the YouTube guy now is more valuable than not more valuable, but puts you ahead faster. Yeah. And it's because these tools really work. And in a perfect world, the most talented person and the most deserving person would get the job.
Yeah.
And put yourself in a position as an editor. You are getting bombarded all the time. Who's the easiest to search? Who has the most amount of check marks? And spending your time doing that is honestly the difference, I think, Eli, when we are coming back to that question. There's no doubt in my mind that there's certain social infrastructures and hierarchies there that you're not going to be able to tackle on your own. But be your own ally in these processes and say no to those smaller jobs so that you can invest the time in what's going to get you to those bigger jobs. And then if you're saying no to those smaller jobs and you're not spending that time investing in your future, at the very least, figure out the other most valuable assets that you have and find that tutor job that's going to give you $60 an hour so you can take that money and have it last longer. I think that that's really where this conversation is landing, is know your worth, say no to the things that are under that consistently, and you'll see a natural reaction. It's just when we don't have a lot of faith in ourselves and we're in high pressure situations in New York where there's a lot of financial responsibility, it creates this illusion where you just say, you cave and you're like, oh, fine. But just hold on a little bit tighter and it works because clearly it's working for people who aren't as talented as you are, Eli. But they're, maybe they're just been doing it a little bit longer and have found those moments where they're changing. Now, for the people that are making lots of money doing things that like they're not very good at, sometimes I don't know the answer to that.
That's like
there's so many YouTube channels where I'm like, and you're making how much money and what are you doing? You're just throwing whipped cream on a car, like what is happening? But with the age of technology, there's a lot to feel overwhelmed about. But like, the easiest way to not feel overwhelmed is to stop sort of being like, how do I get that over there? Just stop, ask yourself, what do I have available to me, and how do I have, what are the other places that I can ask for help? And when we turn off the live feed in a second and we close off, I think what we're gonna do is we're just gonna exchange emails. We're going to find each other on Instagram, and we're going to remember that we are real people with real skills that can have conversations, And now, Eli, I know it's like, oh, how did you get your Instagram count to 20,000 authentically? Or like, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? And in exchange, I will give you something that I know that I'm good at that maybe you're not so good at. And that's really where abundance comes from.
And then one thing that, and she sort of pointed out, the biggest in negotiation, one of the most powerful things you can have is the ability to say no. And the ability to walk away. Because think about it, it's usually, this is what happens. You're gonna see like the people who get the most jobs, they get like 5 jobs, and everybody gets 0 jobs. And that person has the ability to say no. Like you're gonna see that once you get above like $200,000, the salaries just start getting really ridiculous. And it's not like you're producing 10 times more value, it's just that if you're making, let's say you're making $400K a year,
you have the luxury of saying no.
You have the luxury of saying no. You're gonna be like, screw you. I won't work for 3 months because, whereas if you're living paycheck to paycheck, right, you don't have the luxury of saying no. So always try to put yourself in a position where you can say no. Because once you can say no, it changes the game. All of a sudden, now you're more valuable. Oh, he's saying no because, like I said, I think one time my friend did this thing on Craigslist. He saw, he was buying, let's say, a phone. And he said, oh, will you sell for 100, right? The guy said yes. And then he was like, guy answered yes too quick. He didn't answer, and then he sent another email, another different email. He's like, hey, can you sell the phone for 80? The guy's like, hey, I got a deal, so let's wait. He never answered with the other email, he got it for 80. So it's kind of like that. Like when you say yes, it's just like it's like this weird thing, like if you're always available, people don't want you. But then when you're never available, all of a sudden people want to come at you.
I know, it's some sort of psychology of exclusivity, but...
Right.
When I got my job teaching yoga, I teach yoga to a gallery in Chelsea.
Yeah.
I teach their employees once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got the job, I quoted them a range of pay, and like they were like, let's go with the highest number. They were like, let's do that.
Yeah.
And it was this weird moment where I was like, I gave them a range, and they chose the highest amount possible. And it was like, it felt really deserved. I was like, well, yeah, that's what I'm worth. Why did I even give a range? I should just threw out the number.
And then you could have started that at the bottom.
Totally. It was a big
but like I said,
moment.
this is a learning experience.
Yeah.
Then now the next studio, you can say, hey, look, you know what? I don't work for less than this because that's what I get paid here. Right? And like I said,
and maybe that's really the true form of fake it till you make it. Say no and let the client know that like, oh, sorry, I'm so busy. I just, I've got so many things on my to-do list. I got so many things that maybe I'll get to. And they're like, oh, this person is really coveted. I think that's really like this.
Yeah,
like
you're gonna
what
see
it boils
a lot
down
of things
to.
online where the guy's like, it's all fake.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, we only have 5 of these left in stock. They got 50. They got 500.
bullshit.
Right?
So
Like I said, but like I said, oh, we're only
Limited edition,
limited
only
edition.
one time.
Or it's like, hey, I charge $20 an appointment, 3 left today, and it's like, there's a counter too. Like I said, but make people show them the counter somehow. Show them like, hey, look, you know what? You can't meet today. Sorry, I'm booked till next week. You can't. Like I said, and as you get the first time's always the hardest. The first time doing something is always hard. But once you do it, you're like, hey, look, it worked. It'll work again.
Last anecdote, and then we'll cut because I know we've been talking for a long time, but I had a job for a really fancy gym one time, and they hired me to do all of their assets. And I quoted them a good quote because the reason why I got the job was from a close friend and mentor. And I was like, oh, Eric's done good for me. He's recommending me. Meanwhile, Eric doesn't know this guy. He's just putting me in contact because he's the first photographer that he has in mind. And I go and meet this guy who's really like big real estate guy working with like hundreds of thousands of dollars here and there. I don't know that world. He comes to me and he says, Daryl, I almost didn't hire you because you were too cheap and I thought that I was going to get cheap shit. And I was like, oh my God. How many jobs have I lost because I underquoted myself? I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Wow.
I didn't even know that by underquoting yourself, you're telling that person that that's the level of quality that they're gonna get.
Right.
And using that to your advantage. And one more thing, and Carmela, I'll talk about this too separately off camera, but when you send an email to somebody about getting paid on time, and you're talking about trying to, you know, intimidate them into paying you on time in some ways, like really what it comes down to is like putting people in a position where you are really in the know. You are in the know and you have that security blanket, and if you can pufferfish that a little bit and maximize the perception of what that is, even if on the inside you're feeling a little insecure, even if on the inside you know that you're short on rent, factually and statistically, and in terms of negotiating skills and in terms of sales and in terms of like, you know, flash sales, like that's really what you're doing, is you're creating the perception that you have a lot of abundance already, and that psychologically shifts the way that you're being received. So, yeah,
Especially in the middle of the set, like let's say it's a month-long set and they're supposed to pay you every 2 weeks. You just say, hey, I haven't got paid. I'm not gonna work until I get my money.
Right.
Like I said, they're not gonna look for someone new. And
yeah,
like I
mean that's something that I do as well. Like you get 50% down, and you say the project's done. They're like, oh, where are the photos? They're like, I will send you the photos as soon as the invoice is paid.
Yeah.
Guess who's gonna pay the invoice on time?
Yeah. Yeah.
all of a sudden they'll go to the right person. You'll have their check.
Yeah, but yeah, let's take this off camera and let's just exchange information. Do you guys have any other like
Questions?
poking questions?
Thank you, guys.
Or
Thank you guys.
No. This is cute. It was like a little
It's good.
intimate sesh. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes. I'm gonna continue to bother him even if you guys don't. So you'll